Good evening. Welcome back. Another week here on PowerMizzou.com, YouTube, and the PowerMizzou.com podcast. This is State of the Tigers, brought to you every single week by James Carlton at State Farm Insurance, Webster Groves, Missouri. This is Gabe DeArmond, publisher. Jarod Hamilton will be along with me in just a minute. But first, we do want to tell you about our friend James Carlton. You can get in touch with him at carltoninsurance.net. You can call him at 314-961-4800. You can visit him on Facebook. Just Google his information. I'm sure there are other ways to get in touch with him. Cell phone, Instagram, Twitter. I don't know. Plenty of other apps out there. Get in touch with James Carlton at State Farm. He wants to be your insurance agent, and he wants to do some good things for Mizzou, too. If you get in touch with him, tell him you heard about his agency here on Power Mizzou, and you get a quote from him. You don't even necessarily have to sign up. He doesn't have to be your agent. He's going to make a donation to Mizzou's NIL fund. I think you'll probably end up going with James anyway. I did, and he's saved me a lot of money. Great customer service. So we encourage you guys to do that. Bring Jarod onto the show now. Guys, post your comments, questions, whatever in the chat. We'll get to them as the show goes along. We've got a few kind of predetermined topics we'll talk about, but anything you guys want to talk about, we will get to certainly in the second half of the show. Jarod, the last 36 hours to me since everybody woke up on Sunday kind of seems to me like this big just kind of exhale. Like, okay, we've had 10 weeks where we were chasing this thing, and now we're not chasing it anymore, and we got to just take a couple days to kind of figure out where we go from here.
Yeah, it was a pretty big gut punch, to the team and to the fans. But I mean, reading your column earlier, as far as what they can still accomplish, I think you said if they win 9 games, that'll be the 9th time in school history. Yeah. If they get so, I mean, there's still things that they can accomplish for themselves that. It's not like they do that every year. So there's that. But I obviously understand you think you can get, that first place trophy, or you can compete for that, and it's taken away. It definitely stings, especially when you think about when we're 10 months ago when we're at the Cotton Bowl and you're saying, wow, if this is the 12-team playoff, what it is, So it's hard, but kind of got to roll with the punches.
And like you said on Saturday night, you kind of maybe just got a sense of, not a letdown or anything from the players, but just kind of like a sense of, okay, reality set in here a little bit.
Yeah, they were able reality set in weeks ago, but they were able to be delusional as
right.
They were able to be delusional that, win here, certain team lose here, and blah, 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 all these types of weird ways you can put it in the calculator. Now that it's gone, they kind of knew after that game. They started speaking in actuality and matter of fact-ish, as far as this is what's actually in front of us, even though the stuff that's in front of them now is probably what they were going to be looking at for the most part anyway. They now know that that's it.
Yeah. And like you said, it was incredibly unlikely, not impossible, but here's what, not even just the Missouri, it's now impossible, but not just the Missouri-South Carolina result. What Saturday showed me, they could have won that game. They're still not going. There's going to be 10-2 SEC teams that don't get in this playoff because of how the season has unfolded. I was looking at the league standings because the SEC and the Big Ten are so huge. Basically what they've done is they've almost split the SEC. They've stratified it, the top half and the bottom half. And now if you look in the last 2 weeks of the regular season, other than Texas A&M, those top teams don't even play each other. All they're playing is teams that are down in the lower half of the standings, which means unless there's a lot of upsets, there's going to be, I will be shocked if there's not at least one 10-win SEC team that doesn't make the playoff. And I think there might be 2.
Yeah. I was looking at a little bit of some schedules earlier, and they're not playing each other. And some of them, they still got whether they're playing them, they may have just played them this past weekend, or they still got it left on the schedule. They're playing these weak teams, and I guess
State, Kentucky,
they're playing, and not even just in the league, but just here like Alabama playing Mercer. Like they're just
Yeah,
kind of
that's an SEC November tradition right there.
yeah, just getting, but yeah, they're just kind of racking up a win when they kind of need it. It's I don't no disrespect to those teams. It's not a bye week, but it's an
But it
easy
is.
win for you to rack up and kind of keep your players healthy and say, look, I'm doing something this week.
Right.
So yeah, it's tough. And even in Missouri, like you said, even if they beat that team, South Carolina would have been 6-4 if they lost. It would have been real easy to flip the narrative around and say, you beat South Carolina though.
Right.
Like, you
All of a
know,
sudden, that's not a good win,
you
right?
beat South Carolina. They were ranked 21. They had that win, you know, versus A&M, but before that they weren't even ranked. So, so that wasn't going to get them over the top, but it would have kept their delusion going maybe a little longer.
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of covered Saturday and all that. We did a 90-minute post-game show. You've written a lot about it, but so before we move on though, I do see this question in the chat and I just want to get to it because I'm only getting to it because there are two questions about it. I did not know it was a thing. Thoughts on Shane Beamer getting a Gatorade bath after the game on Saturday. So, look, I'm going to say this. That was a huge win for South Carolina. Not only because it made them 7-3, it put them in the top 20 of the playoff rankings in all likelihood, but they've lost 5 in a row to Missouri, and they don't think that should have happened. And a friend of mine that covers South Carolina pointed out after the game, Shane Beamer gave a lot of respect and said a lot of things about Brady Cook, and he never mentioned Eli Drinkwitz. Of all the fan bases and the teams that don't like Missouri very much, I think South Carolina is at the top of that list in this league.
It doesn't surprise me. I didn't see the Gatorade bath. Obviously, I was occupied, but I mean,
Who cares? They're happy,
yeah.
right?
I mean, now even the South Carolina, people in the media when they seen some of the fans trying to storm the field, even they were like, "Don't do that." It's not, and
Right.
because it wasn't that type of, and it was kind of
I mean, the way it happened, you
yeah.
get it, but that's not a storm
No,
the field night.
no, it wasn't. So that's one thing. But getting the Gatorade bath when you add in the fact that there's an actual trophy on the line, I know that doesn't sound like much to a lot of people because it's not for the CFP or whatever, but it's still a trophy. Yeah, they're gonna want that. And when you lose that trophy 5 times in a row to like you said, to a team you don't think you should really ever lose to, the same way how we say if they do these the 9 conference, the permanent rivals or whatever, the teams who I feel like want Missouri are teams who think, yeah, we can hang with them, we can beat them,
We
So
should beat them.
and
Right.
South Carolina is definitely one of those teams. So I don't have any problems, especially when you know how Drink goes when he wins a game. Like right after the OU game, after the Tennessee game last year, I have no problem with people kind of celebrating how they want to celebrate. I mean, you won.
Right. So I love this. Andrew says, have you ever gotten a Gatorade bath after a particularly good chamber? I think we should have this in everyday life. You do something well and somebody just gives you a Gatorade bath, right? If you as soon as my best one would be as soon as I file instant reaction and if it's up within 60 seconds of the end of kickoff, somebody should give me a Gatorade bath for that, man. I had to rewrite that a lot of times. That was hard to do. Getting it up that fast, that's a Gatorade bath.
I hear
I
you.
think we should do this.
That makes Gabe, I have my own personal news from the game. So for the first time, I think it was my 36th game I covered. I feel like for the first time, I was not the last one to leave the stadium. I left with Eli and there were still a couple other people left. So that for me is big because the podcast puts me behind a little bit behind everybody else, and then just trying to get the otter and all the stuff I want to do for the story, and especially if it changes like it did at the end of the game and who's going to win and stuff, that adds even more. So the fact that I was able to write how I normally write but still get out early, that was a win.
I can say this, that's actually 2 in a row for you because at the end of the Oklahoma game, I ran back in the main part of the press box and Callum McAndrew was still there. And when I got home, I was looking at my phone and he had tweeted from the top of the park.
I remember,
so we beat him. That's 2 in a row for you. Big day.
I mean,
that again, Gatorade bath worthy. If you leave and somebody's there, you should ask the guy that's still there to just pour a Gatorade on you.
I don't know if they can. I don't need it to be poured on me. How about they just hand it to me?
No, that's not a bath though. That
I don't think I need the bath. I'm good.
All right, Freeway Jared, appreciate you being here. And he points out, like, this is a legit thing where someone's super, like, I think you want the opposing coach to get a Gatorade bath if he beats you. I think you want the other team on the storm. And, like, I don't know that I've ever seen an opposing fan base storm the field for beating Missouri. So I think you want that. That's a sign that, hey, they view you as a big game.
I mean, I go back to even just a couple of years ago, South Carolina was ranked 23rd and Missouri was unranked, and they came in and I think they won by 10, 13 points or something like that.
Mhm.
Even just for that, like the last time you seen this team on your home field, a much worse version of them beat you, and now that team has come up some. So yeah, I beat a team that's on the come up and also got a victory on our home field by double digits last time. So yeah, you should want teams to feel like they accomplished something beating you.
And the truth is, if you are, like, look, if you're not Alabama, Georgia, if you're not one of these teams that's in the top 3 or 4 of the league every year, you know how you get there? You get there by beating the other teams around you. Like, you go into a year going, okay, Mississippi State, that should be a win. Arkansas, that should probably be a win. A lot of years you go and saying Vandy should be a win, but the way you go from 10th to 6th or from 9th to 4th is by beating the other teams in the middle. It's not necessarily by going and beating Georgia and Alabama. It's by, Missouri made a lot of hay early in the SEC because they beat Tennessee and Florida. And they weren't supposed to do that, right? It wasn't, they maybe weren't beating Georgia. They weren't beating the best teams in the SEC, but they were beating those other teams that were kind of at their level. And so it's the same thing that happened in the Big 12. Like, everybody said the Big 12 North sucked because Nebraska and K-State were down. Well, a big reason Nebraska and K-State were down was Missouri started beating them, so that you're only in a 7-team division. If one team goes up, another one's going down.
All right.
Also, Mike is going to be there after the Arkansas game with you with the Gatorade jug. So, he said jug, not bottle. So it may be an entire jug. I don't know what's going to happen here.
Guys, I don't need it.
Save
it for Gabe and his.
No, I'm not going to lie. If somebody gives Jarod a Gatorade bath walking out of the press box, I will. It'll be the best thing to say. I will.
Well, hold on. Well, for that to happen, that means they got to stay. They're going to have to wait.
Right, they're going to stay like 4 hours after.
You're going to have to wait a good minute to get that in.
So 2:30 game, should be done by 6. Probably walk out of the press box, I'm guessing between 9 and 10. People could still be tailgating. It might be cold, but they could still be doing it.
I'd like to think the fans are sane and they got other stuff to do and don't want to be outside waiting for me.
Jarod points out Boston College did storm the field when they beat Missouri in overtime, which was a really weird thing. I think that was before. I don't think you were on the beat yet.
Is that 21?
Probably. Yeah, they all kind of blend together. But yeah, it was a few years back, and I was not at the game. I think Mitchell might have covered that game for us. But yeah, that's kind of a random BC beating like number 24 Missouri or something, storming the field. Not a lot of big wins up in Boston lately, actually. All right, so let's get to some of the other stuff we're planning to talk about. So we're talking playoffs done. That's not a thing. So bowl game. First thing, and we discussed this earlier today. So we're going to give you guys a selfish answer, and we're going to give you a good for the program answer. Jarod, what bowl game? We'll start with what's good for the Missouri football program. Like, what bowl game do you think would be? Hey, it's not the playoff, but that they can get to, because I think the Citrus Bowl's off the table too. I don't think that's
that's another thing. This recent L did kind of took that one off just because of the other teams around them. I gotta remember all the bowl games, but for the program,
I mean, it's basically Texas, Music City, Vegas,
that's
Gator,
the big three. That's in my mind. Okay,
Relia Quest, and there's one other one.
Maybe the Relia Quest off the strength of the Outback Bowl. A lot of people still know as the Outback Bowl, and that's usually around New Year's, and it's one of those kind of decent bowls outside of the, whatever the top bowl games were. So maybe Outback. I can see people wanting to go to Vegas because, like, it's Vegas.
Right.
in Texas, because like as I saw last year at the Cotton Bowl, there's like a lot of Mizzou fans in Texas, so they can do that. But when I'm trying to go to, let's go to the Music City Bowl, so I can drive there, I can control when I get in and out. I can make a little trip of it if I want to, and I think it's maybe on the 27th or something. It's not traveling on New Year's Day, and it's not even that I love New Year's Day. It's just like traveling on any holiday is horrible if you've ever done it before. So
I think for the program, Music City, I actually think would be pretty good for the program. They haven't played there. They're supposed to play there in 2020 against Iowa, and COVID happened. So I think Music City, like Iowa, would be a possibility. Illinois would be a possibility. So I think that might be a decent, and fans could go there. So for the program, I think it's good. Vegas, like you said, I think a decent number of Missouri fans would maybe try to do the Vegas Bowl. Like it's supposed to be an incredible stadium. It's Vegas. It's going to be warm. It's the week after Christmas. People will be off work, might be able to go make like a 3-day trip out of it. That wouldn't be too bad. And I think you could get a team. I was actually talking about this with somebody. So the Vegas Bowl doesn't have a tie-in right now opposite the SEC because it was a Pac-12 bowl. But most people are thinking it's going to be like a Big 12 team that's probably not, necessarily at the highest level, that maybe loses the title game or something like that. Dude, could there be a better story than BYU playing a bowl game in Las Vegas? That would be incredible. Like the BYU fan base going to Las Vegas, that would be great.
That'd be almost a culture shock.
Right. Like would they go? I don't know.
That's an interesting one. Those
are all the people that say they go to Vegas just for the shows.
Yeah. Right.
And they read magazines for the letters, so for the articles. I mean, so no, I would like that. I also Colorado could be a thing in the Vegas Bowl. Look, whether you like it or not, whatever you think of Deion, like that would be. I think it'd be
TV I want to see.
It'd be a national, like it would get a lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs. Missouri and Colorado have a lot of history. They're playing again in a few years. And it would kind of give Missouri fans a chance to either be like, well, hey, I'm a Deion supporter and we're going to see this up close, or there's a lot of Deion not supporters out there who insist that a decent SEC team would whoop his team and they're not actually any good.
I definitely feel like it's probably a lot more of the latter, but I would love, I feel like they would keep it, cordial, but drink and Deion, whatever they have to say. Again, they'd probably keep it nice, but those personalities going.
It'd be great press conferences, wouldn't it?
Oh man, I think it would. So, well, maybe because I think they know that about the other ones. So I don't want to give any bulletin board material, but it'd be good.
Anthony Mathis wants to know if we'll babysit his dog so he could go to the Vegas Bowl. No, Drew King watches my dog, so sometimes he might be interested in doing that. You got to pay him.
So if we go to the Vegas Bowl,
he's a good pet sitter.
If Mizzou goes to the Vegas Bowl, you pulling up, Gabe?
I'm pretty unlikely. I've done Vegas before. It's fine. I mean, but like I've been there. It's pretty unlikely. It's an expenditure thing. But Music City, Vegas, I think would be good for the program. I think the Gator would be good for the program if it's the right opponent. If you can get Clemson, opponent? It's ACC. So if you could get Clemson, I think that's good. Like, because bowl games to me are largely like, we know a lot of people aren't going to play them and stuff like that, but they're a lot about name recognition. So if you go to the Gator Bowl and you're 9-3 and you lose to Clemson, like there's not a big penalty for that, right? If you go to the Music City Bowl or the ReliaQuest Bowl and you face Illinois, now Illinois is a fine team. Like I don't know that there's a big difference between Illinois and Clemson as teams this year. But if you lose to Illinois, you're going to hear a lot about it because there's a lot of crossover in the fan base. It like Missouri has owned Illinois in football this entire century. I mean, Illinois legitimately quit playing the series because they couldn't win a game in it. And so now, if they beat you, now you let them back in that. I just think, to me, the bowl game is always about minimizing risk. Like when Missouri played Army, there was no advantage. Like they played Army and Navy in a bowl game. So if you win, well, way to go. You were supposed to win. Also, you're terrible Americans because you just beat the service academy. And if you lose, everybody's like, dude, you've lost bowl games to Army and Navy. What the hell is wrong with you? Like, so
Yeah.
that's a big thing to me when I'm looking at the bowl game is who are you going to play? Who's the opponent? And I want to play somebody with some brand recognition so that if you lose, because let's be honest, neither team is putting their full roster out there. So if you lose, whatever, you lost a meaningless game. It was the upside of the Cotton Bowl last year, right? It was, I mean, for Ohio State, there was no upside to that game. If they win, cool, you beat Missouri. You should always beat Missouri. If you lose, you're going to hear about it. From Missouri's side, it was this huge upside, and they were going for it, man.
Yeah, I mean, their thing is getting picked to go to the Cotton Bowl. Like that's where the win starts because of who the opponent is and all that stuff. And history, how history goes for the most part when it comes to sports. If I'm looking up these teams for the first time or whatever, I'm not looking and saying first round pick Marvin Harrison doesn't play, top, 100 selections.
Casual fans don't care.
Yeah, no one's looking at it. So, the name recognition for sure. Also, this means we're in that point of the season where if you win the bowl game, you say your record's 11-2, and if you lose the bowl game, you were 10-2.
Right, 100%.
I think it annoys me so much.
Yeah. Jason brings up a good point, Jarod. He says any bowl game's drivable if you give yourself enough time.
Jason, I see what you're trying to do, and
you hop in that car, head down to Jacksonville.
I know what Gabe's on. Gabe is on your type of time, and Jason, I am not, sir.
That's a noon Christmas Eve departure time to get to the game in Tampa for you.
No.
All right. Danny says my goal's for Mizzou to play in a bowl that matters enough that players don't sit out. Does that exist? Nope. Doesn't exist outside the playoff.
Think about what outside of Luther, and we don't know if he will or not, but we just that's who most people are talking about. Outside of Luther, who would directly from this team have the right?
Theo Weiss. What's he get out of a bowl game?
I think keep building your stock. Play another good team and say I did this. I mean, like I get what you're saying. You played 12 games.
I could see it, but most guys, a lot of guys aren't doing that.
But I don't think where do you think Theo goes? If he goes,
I don't know. Look, Tyler Beatty sat out a bowl game. He was a 7th round draft pick. Guys that go undrafted sit out bowl games. Like it doesn't matter where I think Theo Weiss is going. It matters where Theo thinks he's going or where he thinks he can go. So if he thinks, like, let's say his agent's telling him, hey, you're probably a 4th round pick. And I don't know if that's accurate or not. But let's just say he's telling him he's a 4th round pick. Well, I promise you what he's being told is, okay, look, 4th round pick, cool. That's the floor. So if I don't play that game, if I go out to Arizona or Florida or somewhere and I start working and I really get at it and I put on a good combine, then I could be a 3rd round pick or maybe a 2nd round pick. And the other part is, cool, what if I go play Colorado and Vegas and I tear up my knee? Then I'm not picked at all. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it other than where are you going to get drafted? Like what about Nate Noel? He's missed 3 or 4 games to injury this year. He's been on campus for 8 months. Is he playing a bowl game? Maybe, but I'm not sure.
Definitely can see both. I hate this. I don't know when this started, what year this started, but I think it's terrible.
I mean, I covered that Armed Forces Bowl in Fort Worth. It was December of 22. Dude, there were guys that never was there a prayer they were going to play in the NFL that sat out that game. Missouri barely fielded a team in that game.
I think if they finish 9-3, I don't think as many players will sit out because whatever's decent, you get the Outback Bowl, Vegas Bowl. I can see trying to play in that. I also, a question I want to bring up is in 20. Well, you said December 20. I think you mean 21 for that Armed Forces Bowl. I think
You're right. You're right.
But I remember in 22 when they was picking the Gasparilla Bowl. I know something about the holidays and not making the players work through I wonder if that'd be a thing for something like the Gator Bowl and how they view New Year's or whatever.
It could be, but like every game is after Christmas. Like they're going to be playing after Christmas, and when you get like, I think that Gasparilla Bowl thing was Missouri was 6-6 or 7 and I don't know. They weren't
6-6, yeah,
6-6. They were going to like the best bowl they were going to wasn't a good bowl, like the Birmingham Bowl or the Mayo Bowl. So that fine. Yeah. But when you're in this conversation, I would be severely disappointed if Missouri did that this time and said, no, we want to play before Christmas. No, you're in an actual decent bowl game.
Well, I was more so, I forgot that, yeah, that would include practicing through Christmas and stuff. I was more so thinking of when the actual bowl game is. So if one of those bowls, ones that are on the 27th instead of the Gator Bowl on the 2nd or whatever, but I forgot. Yeah. I mean, still practicing through Christmas, so you're right.
Okay, so let me give you another scenario. Missouri goes to the Music City Bowl. You're going to be playing a second-tier Big Ten team. Are guys that are on the fence saying, yeah, I want to go through 3 extra weeks of practice and miss Christmas to play Minnesota, Rutgers, Wisconsin in Nashville on January 27th? Like that, I think that's a big part of it, man. I think it's the opponent. I think it's the location. I think it's when the game's played. I mean, if you tell them, hey, you worked all year, now go through 3 more weeks of practice to play Rutgers in Nashville, I don't know, man.
I hear you. I wonder how much the Brady Cook thing, because I know he's going to try to play.
He'll 100% play it.
I wonder how much of it, if he can, rally the brotherhood and let's at least some of you, let's play our last game for the Tigers, blah, 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 all that good
right.
stuff. And more so for, I'm not talking about for the Luthers or the Theos, but just those seniors who not likely to get that next shot and stuff like that.
Right. So like Corey Flagg's not an NFL player, right?
Probably not, but he's pretty decent. But
right, I mean, he's a good, but like he's kind of the guy that falls into what we're talking about, right? Like,
yeah,
I would think he plays that game, but it's almost become popular in the last few years. Like, it's almost like a status symbol that you didn't play the game.
It's corny.
And this is what I wonder about the transfer culture, right? Like Brady Cook grew up wanting to play. Like this is all he's ever wanted to do. Missouri could play a game in a gravel parking lot. And if there was a Missouri helmet to put on, Brady Cook would play in it. And look, it's always been this way. Like most of these guys are mercenaries, but it's even more so like a lot of these guys they've literally been on campus for their entire college careers. Their time in Columbia is like a third of how long you've been here covering the team. They've been here for like 10 months, if that. And so just how much buy-in is there when when it's not the big prize?
That makes sense. Yeah.
And like, I want to be clear. I'm not saying anything bad about him. Totally up to every kid. Like, honestly, if I'm advising Luther Burden, I say you're not allowed to play in this bowl game.
Again, different.
But that's a different deal.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, for the Luthers or the ones, even a Johnny Walker or something like that, I get it. Your point about Theo and stuff like that, as far as just
Johnny Walker is another one I would expect probably.
Maybe Mimbu. If that's I guess that's
if he's coming. Yeah, he's a good candidate for NIL to bring him back another year, probably, but who knows?
Yeah, but like I get it for those guys, but everybody else, like you just said, how at the Armed Forces Bowl there was kids you never really seen play opting out. There's got to be a rule to kind of drag them kids by their collar and say you got to play. But I get it.
But what happens when that kid gets hurt? in that game. Like,
Yeah, but if you weren't
because
playing
like,
anyway,
look,
I mean,
Luther Burden's going to get drafted, right? We know that. But what happens if Christian Williams is told he's a 5th round draft pick and he goes and plays that game and he gets hurt, and then
but
he's not a draft pick and then he never gets a shot?
that was my point, though. If you're a draftable player and you got some type of think you'll go here, that I get it. I get you. I'm talking about the other ones, like we were saying, Corey
Okay.
Flagg, where you're just, I don't,
Right.
we don't really know.
Right. I think if there's a guy that he knows, hey, this is the last time I'm ever playing an organized football game, there's no reason not to play. Right.
Right.
But you know these guys, man, they all think they're playing. They all think they're going.
That's why it sounds simple for me
And
to
they
say,
all
but
have
it's
somebody telling them they're going to go.
exactly that's why I'm saying, like, because I know it sounds easy, like, well, if you're not going to the league, yeah, you should play. But I know that they have people saying, well, if this happens, even if you're not drafted, if an injury happens, I've been told by teams such and such, but I say play.
Yeah, it's I mean, look, I've said for years, I'm not going to judge kids. They all get to make their own decisions. We all make our own decisions, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, going back to the question, no, there is no bowl game Missouri can go to that's big enough now that the whole roster is going to play. There just isn't. All right, let's see. So we were talking about the last thing I kind of wanted to hit on. 2025, because like, again, look, there's 2 games left, there's a bowl game, we're going to cover all that, but now officially a lot of people are kind of looking toward next year, and you said you were writing about this a little bit tomorrow. Biggest holes on this team as we know them are what? And understand, the transfer portal opens December 9th, and like, I'm sure there will be some guy we have no idea is going to transfer that'll transfer, because it happens every year. So there will be other holes created. But as it sits right now, let's just stipulate quarterback. We know they're looking for a quarterback in the portal. What else do you see?
Running back, losing Noel, losing Carroll. I mean, I think Drink's whole tenure, he's always had a pretty good back. I mean, the last couple of years, he was able to get Schrader, obviously, in the portal. He was able to get Noel and Carroll and stuff and have that carry the team. And like you said, quarterback, we know that's kind of probably a given. And quarterbacks can kind of advance your team. If they're really good, they can take you somewhere. If they're not, kind of take you back. So that's one thing. But running back for this team has kind of helped the offense whenever they can't get going or they need something. They've been able to lean on the run game to get those things going. So running back, cornerback, kicker, if anything, just for competition, even if they still think Blake Craig is the guy, if anything, just to say, we're going to test this theory out kind of thing.
Yeah. A quarterback, definitely. I like kicker. I know some people will object. Defensive backfield, I think you have to. I mean, you just have to.
Now, real quick before you go on, because you said defensive back. Safety, I looked and I think I don't think I've seen a safety that was necessarily leaving, but
I mean, Charleston's done.
Besides him.
Yeah.
I think Trevez may have one more. I think Sydney may have one more.
Those guys I'd have to look up. I'm not sure. I'll have to look them up individually. Caleb Flagg, I don't know. He might have one more.
No, he should be good.
Okay. Yeah. Williams and Johnson, I'm not sure. But like, yeah, I mean, Carnell's gone, and I count him a little more as a linebacker, but him and Charleston are gone. And look, they just like the safety play's been a problem this year, and the cornerback play's been a problem this year. And if they thought they had somebody better on the roster, they'd be playing, and they haven't. But here's the only thing I'll quibble with you on. If you take a transfer running back, if I'm Jamal Roberts, I'm saying, cool, I'm out. If I'm Kawan Lacey, I might say it too. I mean, like, because Jamal Roberts, like, last year, hey, cool, he's all that. But then you went in, and after Cody left, you didn't bring in just one transfer. You brought in 2 transfers, which basically told him, hey, at best, you're a third down back. If you do it again, like, next year should be the year he gets a legitimate chance to fight for the starting running back job. And if they don't think he's good enough and they need to go get a running back, fine. But this is my problem with the portal, is when you're using it and you're blocking guys that they seem like they should get a shot. Jamal Roberts has done fine. That Keelan Lacey, I thought, has looked pretty good when he's gotten a chance to carry the ball. If to me, if I'm one of those guys and Missouri goes in and brings in a transfer, I'm hitting the portal in the spring.
2, yes. 1, no. I mean, RB1 is just, I don't know. I think he should know. I think Roberts has definitely probably earned at least RB2 status. But if you can find one in the portal, I can't be afraid to find someone established talent that I know can play because I don't want to upset somebody. Like,
right. Look, if
it is
you
what it
find a
is.
guy that ran for 1,300 yards last year and he wants to come here, okay, I get it. But I don't think you go into the portal saying we are searching for a running back. I think you take one if the right guy's there and he wants to come here.
I mean, yeah, but even when we look at Robert's snaps and his carries and stuff like that, it's still been in a limited role. You're gonna go from Cody Schrader, 8th in Heisman voting. You're gonna go from someone like Nate Noel, who's had a 1,000-yard season before and does what he's been doing this year, and you're gonna go to Jamal Roberts, who I also think is a good player, but doesn't have the experience per se as a top back. And you're not gonna bring no one in.
But like, that's the thing. Okay, so he has no experience. Well, how do you get experience if you're going to spend every year just bringing in older guys? Like, if every year you're going in the portal saying, I need a junior or senior because they've done it before, how do the freshmen and sophomores ever prove they can do it? Like, when do they get their chance?
That's fair.
If your recruiting's as good as it's supposed to be, some of these guys got to start being guys.
That is true. And I know I put you could do that for offensive line, but as much as they were building up the depth of the offensive line and how talented they thought even their backups were in fall camp, Ken, is that something where you start shuffling pieces? So Caden Green, the left tackle, you move Logan Reichert up, you have someone else. If Mimbu leaves, I feel like offensive line, if anything, is one of those positions where you probably want developing play more than you're picking guys from the portal. Because my thing is, it's hard for a really good starting left tackle to be in the portal, to be honest.
I think we found that out this year.
Yeah, a team is not going to let a star left tackle or whatever on the line go into the portal. So you probably are better building them up. Got a question for you. What do you feel about? I didn't put this in the column, but I thought about it. Tight end.
I wouldn't hate it. If
is that a best player available situation for you?
Yeah. I think that comes down to what do they think about Brett Norfleet? Like, do they think he's good enough to be, an all SEC level tight end or not? Because that's another place where, more than one guy's plays, but there's not enough catches for 2 tight ends, really. Especially in this offense.
I was going to say the reason I didn't put tight end on there, even though I can see why they would, is just the tight end isn't featured enough.
Right.
And maybe that could be just
because you had Whithafer and Jude James last year. You're going to take 2 tight ends in high school this year. Like, if you're bringing in all those young guys, then.
Right. But I was mostly just thinking tight end doesn't get featured enough for what they want to do. So unless it's somebody who they know is a receiving threat, probably not.
You brought up offensive line, though, and I actually had this discussion with somebody on the board because Cameron Johnson is done after this year, and kind of found out this morning that Mitchell Walters is also for sure done. Like, there was some thought that he had another year, but he does not have another year. He's done. So somebody said, well, we need to transfer a guard. I said, look, if Logan Reichert's going to be the player he was supposed to be, this is the year Logan Reichert has to start at right guard.
Right guard, left guard,
and if he can't, then he's a miss, and you got to go fill the scholarship.
Yeah, again, like I just said, this season really showed us you're not finding starting offensive linemen in the portal. Something has had. I'm assuming something, or that player's coming off, a couple freak injuries, or they've got character issues. That's probably the only way you're going to find someone where you're just like plug and play. Don't have to think about it. So, it's got to be a guy like Reichert. I'm interested if Mimbu leaves, how they attack the tackle spot. That's I feel like the biggest one if he leaves.
I think one of Drink's biggest things before he goes into the portal, before anything else, is going to
He's
a
gotta
guy like
know.
Armand Mimbo and
He's
saying,
gotta know.
here's what we can get you next year. Here's the amount. What do we need to get you, and we'll get it. If that means we have $1 million right tackle, so be it. Because, man, they lose him, then I think, like, if you're losing him, you're not sure who your starting right guard is. Connor Tollison's coming off a knee injury.
You don't know
You
who your
don't
left
know who
tackle
your
is.
left tackle is. I wouldn't even go out and spend the money on a portal quarterback. If I don't know who 4/5 of my offensive line is, I am
There you
wasting
go.
money getting a quarterback.
There you go.
So, yeah, I think
That's
that's huge. All right. Before we get to your guys' questions and kind of finish up for the last third of the show, I want to remind you to get in touch with our buddy James Carlton, State Farm Insurance in Webster Groves, Missouri. You could call him at 314-961-4800. He's on the internet at carltoninsurance.net. I talk to James relatively frequently, and he wants you guys, he's heard from a lot of you guys. He wants to hear from more of you. Get in touch with him. Tell him you heard about him on Power Mizzou. He's going to hook you up with a good rate, and he's also going to make a donation to Mizzou's NIL. So we've had a lot of questions. I'm going to go kind of in reverse order here just because this is where I'm at in the chat. Caleb says, who will be wide receiver 1 next year? Is it Josh Manning, or do we go get it? Let's just talk wide receiver core. What do you see as kind of the receiving core, and is that a place they look at a transfer?
I think it is, just because I don't know if there's a receiver on there that has the combination of experience and being a true wide receiver 1 or 2 on there, like both of them. It's not that they don't like the receivers or that they don't have roles on this team, but being that go-to guy after Luther and Theo, I don't know if they know that yet. And Madison and Crutchfield could be those guys. But we just don't know. They don't really get to play, and they'll probably need another off season of seasoning for us to even get a hint of knowing that.
I mean, I think ideal world, Josh Manning and Marquise Johnson are your starting outside guys, and Mekhi Miller's your starting slot. And then you've got, Blood Madison and Crutchfield as second string, but I could definitely see him going and adding one guy to that.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be an overhaul. I think they have depth. It's about just getting the guy, I guess, if they can.
Yeah, and I think you do want to see either Madison or Crutchfield make somewhat of a significant contribution, like a Josh Manning level contribution next year.
Yeah, or you also got Speedy Johnson. I mean, they got pieces, but you want to see someone be able to kind of take the next step.
No question. Danny wants to know what players have exceeded expectations this year. I mean, I'm sure there's multiple. Just pick a couple that have been better than you thought they were going to be.
I mean, Manning is one.
Yeah, Manning's definitely one.
Even though DeLoach had terrible game, he had a bad game last week. He's one because no one thought when Drink was talking to fall camp as far as like Toriano Pryor, we thought because that was his first player he got in the portal last year, it was kind of a stardom and that's it. So hearing Nick DeLoach kind of rise up and now it's to the point where he's starting. I mean, that's a guy who jumped up. Corey Flagg, although I kind of knew when they got him, like I didn't know why he was not starting to begin with, but I didn't think he would be this good either. But I never knew why he wasn't starting.
I will go with a couple of defensive transfers. I think Zion Young and Chris McClellan have both been better than I thought they were going to be. McClellan, I don't know. The numbers weren't there at Florida, and everybody said, yeah, he's got the talent. Does he have the motor? He's been really good this year.
Yeah.
Like if there's a guy that could be first or second team All SEC, I think McClellan should be in that conversation. I don't know if he'll get that. Just because I'm not sure Missouri's going to get the and then these last 3 or 4 games, Zion Young has been noticeable to me, and not just for the touchdown against Oklahoma. Like he's been in the backfield making plays a fair amount. So those are guys that would jump out to me. Let's see. Just put that on the screen real quick as we go for another question. I was about to put the will you babysit my dog question back up there. I feel like we have already answered that one. Does missing expectations this year hurt Drinkwitz, or do you think that the last 2 years just raise expectations for future seasons?
Does missing expectations this year hurt them? I think that's
Again, we're not talking about a team that wins 6-6.
right.
Like I do think the next 2 weeks are big. If winning the next two, like we're acting like this is a foregone conclusion. If they go 9-3, that's one thing. Hey, they lose one of these games, or God forbid they lose both of them, then we're going to have a different conversation.
I think if they win 9 games, forget the bowl game. If they just win 9 games. No. 9 regular season games. I think it's fine. It's again disappointing, but it's not a failure. You lose, you go 8-4, and you go from 11 wins, or let's stick with regular season. You go from 10 wins and thinking next year is the playoff to 8 wins, which means you got a loss to Mississippi State or Arkansas team that you should have beat. It's a little sour. And then you, on top of the fact that the core of your foundation next year is pretty much all gone, it's going to be hard because I don't know how you think. Just there's so many unknowns, but right now it's hard for me to think above 8-4. Obviously, again, signing day, portal, all this other stuff beforehand. But when we just think about what they're losing, it's hard to just think above 8-4 for next year.
Yeah, and I think this is a question that like I can't really answer. I think next year answers this question, right? If
Yeah.
they come back and they're 8-4 next year, then cool. You've established that as your baseline.
Right.
That's a rebuilding. 8-4 is a rebuilding year. Is phenomenal for Missouri. Now you come out next year and hey, you didn't find the quarterback and you go 5-7, then last 2 years don't really matter. So I mean, every coach in the SEC is more or less on a 1-year contract at this point, honestly. So we can answer that question 12 months from now. But no, I see both sides of this. I mean, 9-3 is a solid year. I'm not trying to fire anybody. Also, what did we talk about in August? They have a 4-game season. It was Alabama, A&M, South Carolina, Oklahoma. That was the season, right? We just kind of assumed everything else is 8-0. There's your season, is those 4. 1-3. And the only one they beat on a miracle. And that team's not nearly as good as people thought it might be. So, like, I also understand the people saying, yeah, you just kind of like, yeah, 9-3 is good, but 9-3 is also about the minimum you should possibly be in this season.
That is true. And in a
I
way,
see both sides.
If you say it that way and you consider again their schedule, like you were just talking about, it's not the same 9-3 as if you got a really good, like good solid win in there. And I'm not talking about the Oklahoma win because that's a rival, but an actual really decent team, like if they would have beat South Carolina instead.
If you'd beaten Bama, right, then that 9-3 is different.
Yeah, it feels like 9-3 default versus like that's a hard earned. Like they didn't get 10-2, but
right. And none of this is Drinkwitz is in trouble or the program. None of this is that. We're just kind of trying to answer your question. Okay, here's an optimistic one. Do you really believe Mizzou will win any more games? I do. I think they'll win at least 2.
Yeah, I think
I mean, I assume he's just talking about this year. I don't think he means like ever, but
yeah. They should. Mississippi State, I mean, they put up points, but they're always trailing.
They can't stop anybody.
They can't stop a nosebleed, to be honest. So yeah, when you're always trailing, you have to pass, you have to put up stats. Now, if Mizzou finds a way to lose that game, it's a problem. But I think they'll be fine. I do think the Arkansas game, while they should win it, I don't think it's as easy as a gimme as people think it is, in my opinion. I feel like Arkansas has at times shown like
I agree.
They're not, you can't just run them over completely at times. So that's not just an easy game, but they should still win it.
And Arkansas also, that one's going to be as important to them as last weekend was to South Carolina. Like Missouri has just absolutely dominated Arkansas for the last decade. I think it's 8-2, and that one is going to be important to them. And I think Pittman has saved his job because they'll beat Louisiana Tech this week, and they'll go to a bowl game. They'll come in here 6-5. But look, the difference between 7-5 and 6-6 is pretty big. All right, Jarod, do you know, outside of games against Eastern Kentucky and Massachusetts, do you know the fewest number of points that Mississippi State has allowed this season?
Fewest number of points. I'll go 27.
33 to Tennessee. That's the fewest points they've given up, other than 7 against Eastern Kentucky and 20 against UMass. And look, you saw that UMass team in person. 20 points by that team is like giving up 50.
Listen, and another thing, Missouri doesn't bomb Mississippi State. That's also not great.
I mean, two
a win
scores.
is a win.
Should be a two-score win. Minimum.
But if you can't score 33, I guess, versus that team. No, I don't think that'll be much of an issue, just considering the last 2 weeks how the offense has been. I mean, Gabe, sounds like they've been listening to what I've been saying all year is run the ball a little bit more. Things open up. I mean, it's crazy how that matches up, but I don't think they'll have a problem scoring that. But if they did, that'd be hilarious, actually.
What happened to Caleb Pyfrom? I mean, he's a true freshman. He's redshirting this year.
Yeah,
there was no way he was ever going to play this season. Asking him to be ready is that. No.
Yeah, we didn't mention them because usually for especially kids where they know there's not only a starter, but there's a replacement right above them too. Like if they know you're down the depth chart, we don't really hear from them after like signing day, or maybe after I could talk to them for one of the profiles I usually do after the season. So,
an offensive line's year 3, man. Like,
yeah, you gotta. Even Logan Reichert is just now getting any talk of like we've seen him do this in camp and we've seen that. Like you don't
like if you're regularly on the field before year 3 as an offensive lineman in the SEC, you're playing in the National Football League.
So does that mean Connor Tollison? He played
decent chance.
Redshirt freshman.
Yeah. Now, that also maybe was a little bit
situation
of necessity, but yeah, I think he's got a shot to be an NFL center. I think Armand Membo's an NFL lineman. I think Caden Green's going to end up being an NFL lineman. Like those, most guys that come in that aren't just 5 stars off the bat are going to be year 3. Mid-Mo Monster, you aren't wasting money on a quarterback. A good quarterback can make a line look better. Look, man, I'm just not in this. Better, sure, but like you can't take if you don't know who 4/5 of your offensive line is. A, nobody's going to come here, and B, like you're not going to invest. And I know you guys are going to laugh at this, but I'm not. I'm not making this up because I've talked to some people. You're not going to invest $1.5 million to $2 million in a transfer quarterback and put him behind the line and say, "Hey, we need you to make these guys look better than they are." It can't work that way.
And you got to account for the scheme and what this team likes to do. Their thing isn't patience and checkdowns. That's not what they really want to do. They want to get the ball downfield. And for that to happen, you need an offensive line. So that's also another thing. You can make all the quick reads you want, but there's a lot of developing routes sometimes as far as like crossers and all that good stuff. It's not always going to work for you that way.
Yeah. All right, let's just finish up real quick. Because look, everybody wants to talk about the playoffs still. And I said, like, I think you got 6 SEC teams that have a chance at 10-2 or better. How many SEC teams are getting in the playoff?
Okay, Texas, Bama, Georgia, Ole Miss.
You sure about Texas?
I mean, they beat A&M, which I think they will.
But if they don't beat A&M,
well, I can't go there.
Okay.
I'm just gonna stick with 4 for now. Tennessee.
So that's my point though. I think 4 are getting in. You can argue over which 4, right? Like I think the Texas A&M loser is out. Whoever it is, I think if you lose that game, I think you're out of the playoff because Texas A&M.
If Texas A&M wins that game, you think that puts them?
I think they got a shot to get in. Yeah, because then you'd have a win over Texas, but A&M as of today does not have a top 25 win because beating LSU no longer matters and beating Missouri is not. I don't think going to be. I mean, maybe Missouri's 24, and maybe at the end of the year that's a top 25 win, but as of now, it's not. Texas is the the dirtiest secret in college football is that Texas's resume is awful. You know what Texas's best win is this year?
Michigan.
I would say Vanderbilt. But either way, I
Oh,
mean,
oof.
neither one of them, like, they haven't beaten any. Beating Michigan shouldn't count for anything.
Yeah,
They
you
suck.
know, they
I
do.
don't care if it was there. I don't care how much you beat them by. So I think the loser of that game is out. And so that could be 10-2 Texas. I don't think that's good enough. You got
Okay, what do we agree on? Alabama and Georgia? If they
Georgia's
win,
in. Georgia, if Georgia gets 10-2, they're in. If
Alabama,
Alabama gets to 10-2, I'm pretty sure they're in.
Ole
But
Miss.
then Ole Miss, like,
I don't know who their last two is. I don't know
probably
nobody's.
their last two are Kentucky and Mississippi State. Like, they should
Well,
not
Ole
lose.
Miss already played
Or
Kentucky. They
Florida,
lost.
Florida and Mississippi State. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Florida and Mississippi State. But like 10-2, and you've got a loss to Kentucky on the resume. I know you beat Georgia, but I'm not
And you lost to
positive about Ole
LSU.
Miss.
And you lost to LSU. Now that I think.
Right. Right. I'm not positive about Ole Miss. And then, I mean, Tennessee, I think what it comes down to is, okay, the Texas A&M loser is out. And then I think either Ole Miss or Tennessee is very likely going to miss I think one of those teams misses it, even if they go 10-2.
That's a good point. I just can't believe LSU has lost, 3 straight games?
Yeah,
And it's tanked their
they're hurting
value.
teams all over the place.
Oh, yeah. Brutal.
But point being, I mean, you're going to have at least one and probably two 10-2 SEC teams not make it. And now here's what we talked about early in the year that's really going to come to fruition. If I'm 10-2, I don't want to be in that title game.
Yeah.
I don't want to be there, because to me, you shouldn't be like, if let's say Georgia, Alabama, I think if Texas loses to A&M, I think it could be a Georgia, Alabama title game. Well, to me, both those teams should be in. Like, I don't care what happens in that game, but I'm not sure that's how it would work out.
Yeah, that would be tough. I wonder if they would pull the subjectivity of last year with Florida State. Like, we know what records say and what things may be, but we're not going to put you in there
because the problem is going to be, if you're a 10-2 team in the SEC title game and you lose, the team you're going to get left out for is going to be a 10-2 SEC team that didn't make the title game. Like, the only reason you didn't make it was you had to play a game that team didn't play. And I think that's an awful precedent to set.
And against the team that, of course, won the championship, the conference title.
Right.
So, yeah, that is, I think the SEC 10-2 SEC title teams, they should probably make
They
it.
should be in.
Now, what happens if one of them poops the bed and loses by like 3 touchdowns? Don't care. Should still be in.
I don't care. They shouldn't have to be there.
Yeah, you can't get penalized for being in the conference championship game. That is
insane. I bet somebody does, though. I bet somebody does. Insane. Here's all I know. That Selection Sunday, because we don't have to work, dude, I'm going to get some popcorn out, and I'm just going to read the internet that night, and it's going to be ridiculous.
Excitement when you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, you guys can read all the message boards on 24/7, and I tell you, you want to go find some of those message boards out of the teams that get screwed. So, all right, well, we're right about an hour coming up against it. We got some other stuff to do. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. If you watched with us live, hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, do all those things. We've gotten here's a little YouTube secret. We're getting a lot of views on YouTube because opposing fan bases apparently really don't like Eli Drinkwitz. So help that algorithm, push our stuff out there. Tell everybody about it. If you're listening on the podcast, do the same thing. And as always, get in touch with our buddy James Carlton at State Farm Insurance. One more time, that's 314-961-4800, carltoninsurance.net. James is going to set you up with the best insurance rates he can. Also make a donation to Mizzou's NIL fund if you tell him you heard about him on Power Mizzou. Thanks for hanging out. Be back later in the week with the opponent preview show, media day tomorrow, basketball on Friday, all kinds of stuff. So appreciate you joining us. We will talk to you next time.